Welcome to John Martin Talks, where we battle ignorance and apathy daily. The growing ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can't or won't do anything and everything to save her. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me start off by saying I'm fashion modeling here today. This is a brand new shirt that I'm wearing for the first time that my youngest daughter gave me for Father's Day. So thank you, Chanel. I'm sporting your gift right now to the masses, to the world, to the Trump supporters, to the dregs, to the deplorables, and like-minded folks everywhere, and including a few snowflakes along the way. Anyway, we're going to start out the show today by kind of updating you, which there's not a whole lot to update on the drone attack from Iran. It looks as if Iran shot down one of our unmanned drones. Is there such a thing as a manned drones? I like when they say they're unmanned. I think if it's a drone, it's unmanned, right? Or unpersoned. But anyway, they shot down one of our drones. According to our official statements, which have been pretty stark on the matter, it was the drone was flying on a mission over international waters. Iran, of course, is saying that it was over their waters and they had the right to shut it down or shoot it down in that sense. And, you know, tensions are, quote, escalating between Iran and America and really the Western world as we speak. So we'll keep you updated on that stuff as things break. Right now, it is more bluster than anything else. And I think Iran is trying to maintain its significance with its own people more than anything. And of course, President Trump is being accused by the mainstream media and the hard left, which is, there is nothing, they're all hard left, right? That he's the one pushing this issue. I actually think it's pretty obvious to Americans and to people around the world, if they're willing to actually look at the truth, look at the actual evidence, that Iran is pushing this. And I personally believe they're pushing this mainly to show their own people that they're still players on the world stage. Iran is suffering from the sanctions that President Trump has put upon them as a result of pulling out of the disastrous Iran nuclear deal. And so kudos to the president. I have much faith in him and his ability and our military and our State Department to deal with this. So we'll keep you posted as things progress. All right, we're going to move on to a story about apologizing, or whether or not you should apologize. And this has to do with none other than Captain Gaff himself, the gaffer. Get one for the old gaffer, Joe Biden. This is from the AP. Biden not apologizing for remarks on segregationist senators. Joe Biden refused calls to apologize Wednesday for saying that the Senate got things done with civility, even when the body included segregationists with whom he disagreed. Well, he might have been a segregationist. So, you know, the first thing I would say about this is, why say this at all? I mean, rather than defend or knock or whatever, there was no need for Biden to say this, was there? I mean, really, I get his point about civility, but there are certainly better ways to make it than this. Even if you agree with him, and I'm not necessarily saying that Joe is wrong about the whole premise of his argument, but to say this in a Democratic primary, maybe you're trying to separate yourself from the pack, which this will probably certainly do. But I just don't understand why he would even say this. I mean, I do because it's Joe Biden, but really it makes no sense. His rivals for the Democratic presidential nomination, including the two major black candidates in the contest, roundly criticized Biden's comments. Now, they're talking about Kamala, where's my Willie Harris, the one that even her own dad is ashamed of, and Cory Spartacus Booker, you know, but these two people, man, it's not like, I mean, they're trying to get their black street creds, if you want to call it that. I mean, these people, I guarantee you that I have more street creds in the black community than Cory Booker or Kamala Harris, and I am Captain Whitebread. I mean, that's all they're doing. They don't even care what Biden said. They're just looking at here's an opportunity for me to show my blackness. I mean, that's really what it's all about. But Biden didn't back down and was particularly defiant in the face of criticism from Spartacus, from New Jersey Senator Cory Booker, who said the former vice president should apologize for his remarks. Now, I don't know if he means a South Park Jesse Jackson apology. You might want to check that out. That's one of the funnier South Park episodes. I've played it on the show in the past. We're going to have studios still in the works. We're still working on it. We have a commitment. It's just not fully constructed yet. But you will see, probably, I keep saying by this time next week, and hopefully I mean it this time, by this time next week, we'll be in studio quality. Somebody asked me on one of my friends actually asked me on my Facebook page, John Martin Talks, which if you haven't gone there directly and liked it, I would appreciate you doing it. Why is your broadcast blurry from time to time? Well, quite frankly, it's because of the internet connection or lack thereof in my bunker in Hawthorne, Florida. I'm doing the best that I can based on the technology available to me. I just mainly want to keep the show alive, and thank you all my loyal listeners and followers who are growing every day. I appreciate it. We are determined to get back to the studio quality we once had, and we will. So just hang in there with us. We appreciate it. But as far as Joe apologizing, who exactly should he apologize to? I mean, I don't think he owes Cory Booker or Kamala Harris anything except maybe a shot at vice president. We might talk about that in a minute. But who should he apologize? I guess the only group I can think that he really needs to apologize to, because it's not the African Americans. They're much tougher than this, man. African Americans have been through a lot in this country, no doubt. And believe me, they're a lot tougher than to be like insulted by Joe Biden. I mean, he's a gaffer. Whether he's intentionally insulting is another thing. But he probably ought to apologize to his staff for being stupid enough to even bring this up in a Democratic primary. Biden countered that it was Booker who should apologize. So they're getting on an apology debate because the senator should know better than to question. You cannot question Joe Biden's commitment to civil rights. Now, I would just tell Joe, chill out, man. Take a chill pill. Look in the mirror, dude. Don't get too excited. Don't get too scared. Just look in the mirror, Joe. I know it might become as a shock to you, but you're an old white dude. You just are, Joe. Regardless of your politics, you cannot escape the fact that you are an old white dude. And let's take it from Captain Whitebread himself, man. The modern Democratic Party is absolutely going to question you. It wouldn't matter who you were. If you're an old white dude in America right now, believe me, the quote modern Democratic Party is going to question you. Whether they should or have the right to is irrelevant, because they're going to. You are going to come under question, sir. You and the other old white dude like Bernie Sanders. But Biden said there's not a racist bone in my body. I've been involved in civil rights my whole career. Well, that may or may not be true. One thing we know for sure is you've been a government employee basically for your whole career. I mean, if you had any other job than getting a government check, and that means no insult to true government employees, but Joe Biden has basically been bought and paid for years. His main salary comes from like China through his son and all that, but that's another story. Speaking on CNN, Booker responded, I was raised to speak truth to power, and that I shall never apologize for doing that. And Vice President Biden shouldn't need this lesson. Truth to power. Cory Spartacus Booker was raised to speak truth to power. But in his neighborhood, he was and is the power. I mean, Cory Booker wants to paint him. Why can't he just be who he is? Why can't people just be who they are? I don't make any great claim to anything other than who I is, man. I'm happy to be who I am. But Booker, man, he's like this. Now keep in mind, this is a guy who grew up with wealth and privilege. Regardless of race, there's very few people who've had more wealth and privilege than Cory Booker. I'm not faulting him for that. It's just a reality. His parents were IBM executives. He didn't exactly grow up in the hood. That's why he's trying so desperately to get black street credit, so to speak. And he went on to, and this is not a knock. Actually, I admire him in this sense. He went on to Ivy League. I think it was Princeton. He went to Oxford. He also went to Stanford University. I mean, this guy has been at the creme de la creme of American society since he first, came out and was made comfortable. At least they didn't kill him, his parents, that is. So truth to power, Cory Booker. Sir, you are the power and always have been. What a joke, man. The firestorm is quickly becoming one of the most intense disputes of the Democratic presidential primary, underscoring the hazards for Biden. I mean, Biden is a walking hazard as he tries to turn his decades of Washington experience into an advantage. I guess if you're for a swamp rat, that's it. But most intense dispute. I love this. They said this has rapidly become the most intense dispute. So it wasn't a Green Deal. Now, this all says a lot about where the modern Democratic Progressive Party is. The Green New Deal, that's not controversial. They all signed up for it. They couldn't wait to be jackasses riding jackasses. And Biden, he even plagiarized it, so he didn't even have time to write his own paper. So he went back to his old bag of tricks and plagiarized the Green New Deal. And so that wasn't controversial. Killing babies after they're born, make them cook, have a discussion, and then off with their head. I mean, that's not controversial. That's not the most intense dispute. How about not moving forward on communism? Not moving our country to communism. You say, well, communism, yeah. Well, they're saying socialism, but really, if you look at it, what Bernie, who's leading the so-called Socialist Democratic Front, so to speak, he's a communist. He is a communist, plain and simple. And most of these people, if you look at the Democratic Party, look at Ocasio-Cortez, for instance. She's a classic communist leader. Tell me where she's not all about do what I say, not what I do. I mean, she preaches affordable housing and lives in the ritziest neighborhood in D.C., basically. She preaches for the Green New Deal, yet she's chauffeured and goes all over the world and the country flying in jet airplanes. I mean, these people are perfect little communists. But let's go on with the article. Billy Bob tells me to move on. Billy Bob is my psychic sidekick, by the way. If you haven't tuned into the show before, I do speaks with the fishes. I'm a bit crazy here, but he keeps me straight. He has a Twitter handle, by the way. It's at BillyBobBass1, and mine is at John Martin Talks. We're not the greatest Twitter twats in the world, but we do a little bit. Back to the article. Instead, he's infuriating, talking about Biden, he's infuriating Democrats who say he's out of step with the diverse party of the 21st century and potentially undermining his argument that he is the most electable candidate in the race. I love how the Democratic Party is always described as the most diverse. Now, I guess that really depends on how you look at it. If you're going strictly on things that are really irrelevant, like skin color, like they want to tell you is irrelevant, like sexual choice. I mean, I'm not sure it's irrelevant, but they want it to be, right? But if you're diverse about sexual choice, about skin color, about where you may come from, even religious beliefs, unless you're Christian, you're not really welcome, but lack of religious beliefs, atheists, or if you're one of the practitioners of the religion of peace, then yeah, it's diverse in that sense. But if you're talking about diversity of thought, not only is it not diverse, but there's a zero tolerance policy for diversity of thought in the Democratic Party. So if you're actually looking, if you want everybody to look like they're a McDonald's commercial where they're all trying to get just that right person segmented, the right color combination, then yeah, the Democratic Party is for you. But if you actually want to be able to be a free thinker and maybe have your own opinions and make your own decisions, you, sir, or ma'am, or whatever you want to label yourself, regardless of color, creed, national origin, or letter of the alphabet, if you have any thoughts of being an independent thinker, you better think again. The controversy began at a New York fundraiser Tuesday when Biden pointed to long-dead segregationist Senators James Eastland of Mississippi and Herman Talmadge of Georgia to argue that Washington functioned more smoothly a generation ago than under today's broken hyper-partisanship. Well, so they're dead. So that must mean they're Republicans, because only good politician is a dead Republican, right? Well, I hate to bring it to you snowflakes out there. These people that they're all arguing, the whole argument between the dead ones, the live ones, and everything in between, they're all Democrats. Every one of them is a Democrat, man. Talmadge, a Democrat from Georgia. Eastland, a Democrat from Mississippi. Yeah, and the guy from Mississippi, he was known in the Senate as the voice of the white South, I think was it. So you want to argue Democrats, and we're going to talk a little bit about this in a minute, but Burgess Owens, a great NFL player and now commentator and author, he was in front of the U.S. House Committee yesterday about this reparations. Now, Mr. Owens is a black guy, and he said that once he knew the history of the Democratic Party against his race, they need reparations from the Democrats is what they need. Anyway, we're going to talk more directly about that in a minute. We mentioned it yesterday on the show that he was going to testify, but it was pretty interesting, the testimony. We're going to do a story on that. But my point being, all these people who are arguing the racism, the past, bringing forward, they're all Democrats. Look, wake up out there, snowflakes. If you haven't done your research, don't just take my word for it. Google it, but Google is of the devil, and no telling where you might get it. But if you do any honest research, you will see that the Democratic, you look at any atrocity to people of color, it was committed by Democrats. It's just the truth. It may be the hard truth for you. It's the unvarnished truth. I scrub away all that hard down to the hardwood truth here at John Martin Talks. It's the truth, period. Plain and simple. The Democrats and people of color have had a frictional, hate-filled relationship up until modern times when all of a sudden the big lie came out. Anyway, don't get me on that one. Back to the story here. Biden said, we didn't agree. This is some of the comments that got him in hot water, or at least brown water of color, I suppose. We didn't agree on much of anything Biden said of the two men who were prominent senators when Biden was elected in 72. So when he was elected in 72, these racist Democrats were waiting on that old boy. Biden described Talmadge as one of the meanest guys I ever knew. Is that where you got your street smarts from? And Eastland called him son, though he made sure he said he didn't call me boy. I guess he didn't pat you on your little old head. Maybe that's why you're balding. No offense to bald men out there, but maybe that's why Joe got bald, is because he was getting patted on the head by all his racist, segregationist, Democratic friends, man. Wow. And this is the guy, keep in mind, Joe Biden, this is the guy, whether you agree with him or not, I think you would agree with me, he is stupid what he's doing. But he's the one that's supposed to win the Democratic primary. Good luck with that. I think Biden's poll numbers are going to steadily whittle down. And the debates, what about the debates, man? I can't wait to see the debates up there. They're all going to be pecking at Joe Biden, I think, man. Peckerheads against the peckerhead, I guess. Back to the article. Yeah, even in the Senate, Biden said, at least there was some civility and got things done. Now, is that a dog whistle? Is he dog whistling to the white segregationists that, hey, I got along with you fine? Why isn't what Biden said there? Let me read that again. At least there was some civility, talking about when he was working with these white segregationists. We got things done. That sounds like a dog whistle to me. I don't know. We'll see. A pile-on from Biden's rival. I guarantee you, if the president, Trump, had said that, they'd have been like, oh my God. A pile-on from Biden's rivals quickly ensued. Booker said he was disappointed by Biden's remarks. Oh, you disappointed Spartacus? That could be dangerous. He said, I have to tell Vice President Biden, as someone I respect. Do you really believe Cory Booker respects Joe Biden? I'd be so shocked. That he said, I respect that he is wrong for using his relationships with Eastland and Talmadge as examples of how to bring our country together, said Booker, who is African Americans. Now, let me just tell you, and just hang on out there before you get too freaked out. I agree with Spartacus on this. This is a stupid example that Biden's bringing up. I don't know if it's racist or not, but it's definitely stupid. But I would follow that up with a question to Mr. Booker, Mr. Spartacus Booker. What plan do the Democrats have for bringing America together? Because I don't see one. I mean, their strategy, the Democratic Party's strategy for at least the last several decades, and probably longer than that, has been to break everybody up into groups. In other words, splinter group. Splinter, fracture everybody, get everybody upset, get them all pissed off, and then bring them back together with a common boogeyman. Not solving problems, getting their hate ginned up so you're going like, yeah. And then say, this is who you need to point that out. And then, of course, for the Democratic Party, our great Cheeto head president, I say that with affection sometimes. President Trump, man, his hair is a little Cheeto-ish. We can laugh at ourselves. If we can't, then we're just way too serious. But President Trump is the perfect boogeyman for them, at least in their eyes. I think he's the perfect president, the right guy at the right time. But they think he's the perfect boogeyman. It sure unifies the progressive left. There's no doubt about that. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, of course, he's got to chime in. Comrade de Blasio, who is like Poland, he's just barely above zero. And there's some that are at zero, but he's not even at one. He's like a fraction above zero. Honorable mention, I guess. But Bill de Blasio, a fellow Democratic presidential candidate and a white man who is married to a black woman, white man married to a black woman, he got to check some boxes. I'm checking a few of them myself. He tweeted out, it's 2019 and at Joe Biden is longing for the good old days of civility, typified by James Eastland. Eastland thought my multiracial family should be illegal. Well, I have to tell you, Comrade Bill, you may be right, but they're all Democrats. Why are you running in the Democratic Party, in the Democratic primary, which is the party of segregationists, which is the party that wanted to make your marriage that you speak of illegal, and mine as well for that matter. That's another reason why I'm not a Democrat, Bill. Wow, these Democrats fighting Democrats. But see, the media makes it sound like, that Joe's pushing over towards the Republican side. No, Joe is just returning to the Democratic Party roots. That's all Joe's doing. California Senator Kamala Harris, a black presidential candidate. See, everybody has to be identified and qualified. I mean, Kamala Harris, I think most people know she's black, or at least she's black and Indian and Jamaican and Indian descent. I mean, come on, man, what difference does it make? But Kamala Harris said Biden's coddling segregationists, so I can see Biden, he's coddling segregationists, a lot like the Clintons when they call it, and Obama, by the way, when he was at the funeral for Robert Byrd, a Democrat, former Supreme Grand Dragon Wizard, something like that, of the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, these Democrats, man, they like to wear blackface and hoods, and black Democrats seem to coddle them. So don't just accuse Joe Biden of coddling them. Sure he has, but Barack Obama coddled him as well. I mean, good Lord, man. But said coddling segregationists in a way that suggests to me that he doesn't understand, this is Kamala Harris's words, understand the dark history of our country. Let me just ask these people this. What if Joe Biden actually wins the Democratic nomination? I mean, he's leading right now, right? What if? Isn't this going to make perfect commercials against Biden? Can't you see these commercials being run in black neighborhoods where you have black people saying that Joe Biden basically is a racist? And mainstream, if you want to call them that, progressive, liberal Democrats call people of color in a commercial calling Joe Biden a segregationist racist. I mean, that is rich, man. But not to be outdone, another old white dude, or is this guy, is it Paco? Oh, it's Beto O'Rourke. I'm sorry. Beto O'Rourke. I mean, these Democrats will confuse you. I mean, here's a guy that's like lily white, basically red-headed Irish, nothing against the Irish people. But why is he not proud to be Irish? I would be. Why not? But his name is Robert Francis O'Rourke, but of course he's Beto O'Rourke, said for the fight, and just, you gotta love this paragraph, man. Now, if any paragraph out there qualifies this dude to be a lifelong political figure, it's this paragraph. Beto O'Rourke said, for the vice president to somehow say that what we're seeing in this country today is a function of partisanship or a lack of bipartisanship completely ignores the legacy of slavery and the active suppression of African Americans and community of color right now. What did he just say? I mean, can you actually tell me what the hell he means by that? I mean, he's just taking all these words, throwing them together, all these like bird whistles, if you will, or cat calls or dog whistles or some kind of whistle, box checkers, I guess, and just tossing them into a paragraph, man. He really said nothing. If you really look at it, he said he did nothing. But he got a quote. Meanwhile, most Democratic White House hopefuls will again gather in Miami next week. God help us, Florida. Be ready down there in South Florida. They're coming. Next week for the first presidential debate of the primary season. Biden will almost certainly come under fire for his comments this week. Well, he may or may not. He probably will. Depends on how they poll between now and then. But you know, one thing that was announced a couple of days ago, and I guess it's still a work in progress, we'll have to wait and see. But while there's this Democratic debate going on, President Trump going all Trump on him, I mean, as only he can, he's going to have like a Twitter storm against them, supposedly, while they're actually speaking. I guarantee you that his Twitter handle will probably be the higher rated of the two. But Biden did. He sought to diffuse the tension on Wednesday by saying he was trying to argue that leaders sometimes have to work with people they disagree with to achieve goals such as renewing the Voting Rights Act. So does Biden have a point in that sense? Yeah, he has a point in that sense. But keep in mind this: if you're thinking about supporting Biden, or you will support him if he wins the nomination, keep this in mind. Joe Biden is the ultimate swamp rat survivor. He's a swamp rat survivor. That's why I say his Indian name should be Windblow Joe, because this is how he gets his principles. He puts his finger to the wind, and whichever way is blow, that's where old Joe go, right there. So, don't be surprised if he doesn't flip-flop on some of this, multiple times during the campaign. One thing is guaranteed: Joe is going to say and do things that are going to get him in hot water. There is just no doubt about it. That's one of the great things about him running, by the way. Makes my show a whole lot easier. Next article here comes to you from Charleston, South Carolina. A bunch of Democrats are going to be gathering in South Carolina this week, leading up to the Democratic debates next week in Florida. There's a series of events that are going to draw them, and Biden is actually committed to show it, some of these. But this is about Elizabeth Warren from Politico. Warren emerges as potential compromise nominee. So Bernie, they're scared of Bernie. We'll talk about that more in a minute. They're a bit worried, not scared of Joe, just worried about Joe and electability of other people. And Elizabeth Warren, I give her credit on this, man. She's outworking them all from what I can see. And hey, there's something to be said for work ethic. And when it comes to politics, I don't like her politics, but I admire, she brings her lunch bucket, man. She's a worker. There is no question about it, man. But on with the article. There was a time not so long ago when leading Democrats warned that Elizabeth, Pocahontas as the president calls her, I call her Liawapa, the whitest woman on the planet by her own paperwork, Warren's fantasy-based blue state populism risks leading the Democratic Party to ruin. So not her lying, not her, lying to get into various Ivy League schools and all of that. Not that, no. Not her not ability to drink a beer, don't even know how to work a beer. That's not it. But the fact that she may actually be a socialist is troubling for some of the mainstream Democratic Party officials. But in a revealing tale of how far her campaign has come since its early February launch, some unlikely voices at the center of the party are growing more comfortable with the idea of Warren as the nominee. Elizabeth Warren as the nominee. Excuse me a little bit. It's hot under these lights, man. Hot under these lights. But let me just tell you, this kind of chimes in with what I said a minute ago. Make no mistake about this. If Elizabeth Warren actually wins the nomination, I'm not saying she will, but she could. She's no Hillary Clinton. And I'm not even talking about policies. I mean campaigning. Elizabeth Warren will absolutely go to a certain extent toe-to-toe with President Trump on the campaign trail as far as she will work. Just she may not be able to get his where, she may not have her own private jet, although they'll probably buy her one. But don't expect Elizabeth Warren not to go everywhere. She'll go into deep red states. May or may not be a right calculation, but she will. So Elizabeth Warren is no Hillary Clinton. If she is fortunate enough to get, or unfortunate for us, to get the Democratic nod, she will work extremely hard to become the next president of the United States. I'm just saying it as is. I'm not saying I want that. Obviously, if you know me, I don't want that. But make no mistake, she'll work for it. She will. It's a sign of how the ideological lanes of the 2020 primary have blurred and overlapped, and the steady progress Warren is making as a candidate. I like how they say blurred and overlapped lanes. I'm not so sure I agree with that. Now, there are some differences there's some diversity among the Democratic hopefuls. They look different. They are different sexes, different colors, different sexual persuasions, it sounds like. Somewhat different political experience. Some have had a lot, some have had a little, all of that. There's a diversity in how they look. There is no doubt about that. But there is almost zero diversity in how they think. The only diversity in there is who is the best at delivering their various messages. And Elizabeth Warren is doing a pretty fine job, according to everything I read and see within the Democratic primary, the actual primary. She's not like I said Hillary, where she ran whatever kind of race she did. Make no mistake, Warren is very focused on winning, very focused on winning. But as far as like her being very different from the rest of them, as far as the actual policies, there's not much. There is very little measurable difference between Biden at the top and somebody who you don't even know, like de Blasio or somebody like that at the bottom. There's really very little, if any, difference in their philosophies. Maybe in how they espouse them, but not their actual philosophy. Back to the article, but it is also a statement on Bernie Sanders. So Warren's rise in the polls and attention getting, they've been making a case in the media the last couple of weeks that she's chopping or whittling down Bernie Sanders. I think there's some truth to that. I think it's overstated, but we'll move on. Warren's top rival for progressive votes, talking about Bernie Sanders. Sanders continues to face significant resistance from within the party. He's not even a member of the party. And nowhere more than among the moderates and establishment players who blanch at his talk of democratic socialism, because they don't want you to know who they really are. But here, fear and the burn. So it sounds like that the Democratic establishment fears the burn. But make no mistake about this. They don't fear Bernie Sanders because of his policies per se. They don't fear him because he's going to be anti-establishment, because he's not. And they don't fear him draining the swamp. What they fear is them not being part of that swamp anymore. That's what it's about, because Bernie will bring a whole new group of rats with him and a whole new group of swamp critters with him. Be like the Christmas critters from South Park. Another South Park reference. Check that out. It's pretty scary. But they're not afraid of Bernie because he's not like, radical enough for them or wants to fundamentally change America. They're afraid that they'll be left out of the political soup, the swamp. That's what they're afraid of. Matt Bennett, a co-founder of Third Way, which is this activist group that was at one point in 2016 opposed to Elizabeth Warren, now they're starting to warm up to it, because their thing is that they believe in moderate Democrats as if they're worth some. So this guy, Matt Bennett, the co-founder of A Third Way, check him out. You can do some research on him. He says, one is a democratic capitalist narrative. He's talking about Elizabeth Warren. Imagine Elizabeth Warren being described as a democratic capitalist narrative. I don't think so. She's like a superpower government narrative. The other is a socialist narrative. They're talking about Bernie. I would say he's more of a communist narrative. There's not much. There is very little difference between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. There really is very little difference. And maybe he needs an Indian name as well. Establishment and moderate Democrats haven't necessarily been won over to Warren's camp yet. many still point to former Vice President Joe Biden as their preferred candidate. Now, let me ask you, do you really believe that these swamp rat establishment people are really for Joe Biden? That that's their first choice? It may be among the existing field, but really, what it really shows is they're just desperate. They're just desperate to maintain the status quo. And they believe that Joe Biden represents the best chance to hold on and maintain the status quo. They know that Donald Trump is trying to blow it up, which is one of the reasons why, one of the main reasons I supported from the start, is to blow up what we now call drain the swamp. But they're for Joe, not because they love Joe Biden. They just know that the rest of these people aren't going to be able to hold on and maintain the swamp, and Joe's their best shot. That's all it's about. And these include never-Trumpers as well. But the tensions that once marked Warren's relationship with moderate Democrats have begun to dissipate as she methodically lays out her agenda and shows a folksier, more accessible side that wasn't always apparent in her role as a blue state senator, Massachusetts senator, and progressive icon. You know what it sounds to me like they're saying here? That old Pocahontas, Liawapa, as I call her, Elizabeth Warren, the whitest woman on the planet, by her own accord, maybe she's finally accepting her whiteness. You ever thought about that? Maybe she's just accepting that, hey, I'm just another old white chick up here trying to run for president. Welcome to the club. And once you become white, you're going to be out. So you better careful what you wish for, Elizabeth, because once you become accepted, you'll be rejected. It's just crazy. Such is the topsy-turvy world we live in. All right, this next story comes to you. It's kind of an extension of a story we did yesterday. Yesterday, if you saw it, and you can see our show, by the way, on Citizens for Trump every day, Deplorable Resistance, Medium Measures, John Martin Talks Facebook page. If you hadn't liked it already, go there, like it, and share it, because you not only get the show every day, but you'll get comments that I make on, and memes and comments I make on various stories. And I posted 2 videos that are related to this story. We first covered it yesterday. Go back and look at the podcast, where yesterday there was House hearings on appropriations of reparations, I guess. Getting a little tongue-tied. But the committee was about reparations for slavery. And so there was expert or testimony there yesterday. And there was one they're highlighting in this Mediaite article that I want to cover. And I'm also going to mention one that, if you haven't seen him before, another one is Burgess Owens. Burgess Owens, a former NFL player. He had an excellent presentation, testimony to the committee. And this gentleman here we're going to talk about is a guy named Coleman Hughes. He did an excellent testimony. Both are black men. Both are very successful. Owens from the NFL is a Republican now. Hughes says in his testimony that not only is he a Democrat, but he's never voted for anything but Democrats. And you'll see how that's significant. I say all that to say that both of these videos are posted currently on my John Martin Talks Facebook page. So check them out. Anyway, Mediaite article. Chill, 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 chill. Congressional hearing explodes as whiteness trashes slavery reparations. As witness, I said whiteness. Slip of the tongue there. They weren't white. Explodes as witness trashes slavery reparations bill. Sometimes I get excited ahead of myself. A congressional hearing erupted when Quillette writer Coleman Hughes trashed a bill to study slavery reparations as a moral and political mistake, forcing the chair of the hearing to tell the audience to chill several times. And that's the guy that famously was eating the fried chicken the other day, if you want to know who that is. And I mentioned Burgess Owens and this Mr. Hughes. As I say, both their videos are posted on JMT. Check it out. Hughes testified for the minority and delivered, that means the Republicans, and delivered a lengthy opening statement against the bill in question after noting that nothing I am about to say is meant to minimize the horror and brutality of slavery and Jim Crow. Now, before I go on, let me ask you this. Who is actually trying to minimize the brutality and reality of slavery and Jim Crow? Is there any significant group of people that are doing that? I mean, really. There are minorities of people that do it. There's some very vocal groups of people that probably do it. But really, when it comes to, I'm talking about both sides, political, independents, Republicans, Democrats, most any party, libertarians, conservatives, Green Party. Is there anyone who's really minimizing this? Because they make it sound like there is. I just don't think there is. I just don't see it out there. I don't see anybody with any credibility whatsoever, let alone any numbers, actually doing that. But they go on to say, and that Mr. Hughes considers, he said, I don't consider our failure to pay, he does. He says, I do consider our failure to pay reparations directly to freed slaves, in other words, the ones that were actually slaves when they were freed. He said, after the Civil War, to be one of the greatest injustices ever perpetuated by the U.S. government. And he's got a point there. One thing for sure, if there ever was a time to actually pay reparations that were due and that would have made a difference, that would have been the time to those people freed directly after the Civil War, many of which actually fought on the side of the Union when they had the opportunity. So, I think he makes a valid point there. But the audience at the hearing booed Mr. Hughes after he said this. Check this out. He said, black people, and keep in mind he is a black man, very successful, black people don't need another apology. We need safer neighborhoods and better schools. Something to boo there? I don't know. We need a less punitive criminal justice system. President Trump is working on that. We need affordable health care, and none of these things can be achieved through reparations for slavery. Now, how could anyone boo that? How could you boo that unless you're just about political points and not actual solutions? This man is talking about the real world, not the fantasy world that the progressives want you to live in. But Hughes went on to say, nearly everyone close to me told me that not to testify today. In other words, he said everybody he talked to told him not to testify, most everyone. He said, they told me that even though I have only ever voted Democrat, I would be perceived as a Republican. Yeah, because you're not drinking the Kool-Aid anymore. And therefore hated by half the country. Others told me that by distancing myself from Republicans, I would end up angering the other half of the country. And the sad truth is that they were both right. That's how suspicious we have become of one another. That's how divided we are as a nation. I have to say that sadly that most of that, if not all of that's probably true, what he's saying. And that's sad. But I will put a little caveat on that. The MAGA hat people, the people that are pushing the MAGA, not just Trump supporters, by the way. Now, all Trump supporters pretty much are MAGA people. But not all people who believe America first are necessarily big fans of Donald Trump. Most are, but not all. But one thing I'll tell you, and I've had quite a bit of experience. I just came back from that great rally we had in Orlando. Check out Citizens for Trump, where I covered it live. It's also on my John Martin Talks Facebook page. Check it out. We had a team effort down there representing Citizens for Trump and you, the American people. It was fantastic, to say the least. But based on my experience, I would say that most people who support the MAGA agenda, most Trump supporters that I'm aware of, would probably agree with Mr. Hughes on these comments. Mr. Hughes went on to say, to describe reparations as not just divisive, but an insult to many black Americans by putting a price on the suffering of their ancestors. Think about that. Think about that. He's right. He's absolutely right. It is an insult to think that you could put a monetary figure on something that would somehow absolve the dark stain of slavery in our history. You can't. There's no way to absolve that. We can only work through it and get through it and past it. We're not going to forget it. We can overcome it, but to forget it is not only not possible, but it doesn't make any sense. We need to study all of our history, the good, the bad, and the ugly of it. All of us have some things in our past that we're not proud of. And collectively, we should have a hell of a lot of things we are proud of, regardless of skin color. That little old flag back there in the back is something we ought to be bringing us together, not kneeling down and tearing us apart. Get off your knees, off your back, off your butts, and stand for something, or you'll fall for anything. But he goes on to say, insult to America by putting a price on something. And we would turn the relationships between black Americans and white Americans from a coalition into a transaction. That's some powerful stuff, man. I don't care what you say. That's some powerful stuff. And Mr. Burgess Owens, I was talking about earlier, he said very similar things in a different mannerism, in a different style. But they basically was saying a lot of the same things. Hughes went on to say that reparations, by definition, are only given to victims. So the moment you give me reparations, you've made me into a victim without my consent. Not just that, but you've made a third of black Americans who poll against reparations into victims without their consent. I wasn't aware of those numbers. That's impressive. But this statement is just wow, you know. And black Americans have fought too long for the right to define. I love this sentence. Let me start over. And black Americans have fought too long for the right to define themselves, to be spoken for in such a condescending manner. He's talking about, in case you snowflakes don't get it, he's talking about the very heart of what it means to be an American. It's not about skin color. It's about belief in the rugged individual, the rights of the individual, the strength of the individual, and what can happen when rugged, independent, individual people come together on something. There's nothing that we cannot do. Nothing. We can beat everybody. We can do anything. We can overcome anything when a group of rugged individualists, what used to be just called Americans, do find something to get behind together. Look out, because we're going to get where we want to go. Good, bad, or ugly. And that's what, to me, he's talking about here. Rugged individualism. And we don't hear that very much anymore. And I agree, to lump all black people as needing any kind of thing other than freedom to be who and what they truly God-given abilities to be, anything less than that is an insult to anyone, regardless of skin color. Man, I love this statement he made. You can probably tell. But Hughes said, the question is not what America owes me by virtue of ancestry. The question is, and man, it chokes me up to say it. The question is what all Americans owe each other by virtue of being citizens of the same nation. Wow. Amen, brother. Amen. I don't mean that in any mockery. Preach on, man. Amen. And the obligation, he wasn't done. He said, and the obligation of citizenship is not transactional. It is not contingent on ancestry. It never expires, and it can't be paid for. For all these reasons, Bill H.R. 40, this is the reparations bill, is a moral and political mistake. And the congregation said, amen. Wow. I mean, man, I don't think, this guy, I don't know much about him, but I'm going to get to know him because he represents what we used to want. Then he said he's a Democrat, right? Basically. Now, he has a diversity of thought, which is a crime in a Democratic Party. So the Democrats, you ought to embrace this guy. I doubt you will, because that's probably who was booing in the background. But I don't know about the Republican Party. I don't pretend to speak for them. I do believe we'd be welcoming to you, sir. But I can tell you what, the Trump train would welcome you on board any day of the week, baby. Woo, woo, and that I think you can take to the bank. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show today as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Check us out straightforward on John Martin Talks Facebook page. Like it, share it with others. I appreciate my ever-growing audience like Citizens for Trump, Deplorable Resistance, and others. Thank you so much. Keep liking it. Spread the word. But above all else, from my family to yours, have a blessed day.